Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another installment of Terror Thursdays. This week we are being joined, Yota and I are being joined by Winnie BLV. So Winnie is going to be discussing her favorite books and favorite authors, which is what I'm talking about today. And Yota is going to be telling you about some scary legends and scary happenings in and around her hometown. So definitely go over and watch both of them. They're going to be really interesting videos. I do have a feeling that Winnie and I are going to be mentioning some of the same authors because we share a lot of the same tastes. Surprise, surprise. So don't be surprised if you hear some of the same things. So I'm going to let you know that I will be showing some book titles from some of the authors that I've picked. But these titles may not be representative of what I consider to be their best works. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. And I'll also show or talk about some other writers who I don't have a book right here handy to show you. So I want to start off with who I consider to be the master of modern horror, and that is Richard Matheson. He was the inspiration for Stephen King. He wrote many screenplays that were adapted to episodes of The Twilight Zone, one of which was Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. And that's the episode that starred William Shatner. You can see the illustration here. He is a man on a plane and he's with his wife, and he sees a gremlin on the wing of the plane and no one believes him. And it turns out that it was actually true. So he's done so many different works. He's the author of The Legend of Hell House. He is the author of I Am Legend, which was turned into a movie, a more recent movie starring Will Smith, but it was adapted once before. And I don't remember what the title of it is offhand, but it stars Vincent Price, and it's based on the same story. It's fabulous. I'll look up what the name is and I will put it in the description box, but I definitely recommend it. And he's also written some other pieces. He's very spiritual, or I should say was very spiritual, because we lost him, I think, in 2009. But he wrote What Dreams May Come, which was adapted into a movie starring Robin Williams, where a man loses his wife and he has to go and find her in the afterlife. And Matheson drew on a lot of his own personal spiritual beliefs, which probably are a little bit deeper than what most people consider in spirituality, because he kind of goes above and beyond what a lot of people are taught in their religion, if that makes any sense, because he considers, well, you'd have to watch the movie and you'd have to read the book to really kind of grasp all of it. But he definitely believes in a higher power, obviously, because his son is named Richard Christian Matheson, so take that for what it's worth. And his son also is a very good writer, screenplay writer as well. But anyway, his vision of the afterlife is very soothing, and, you know, just goes a little bit beyond what most Christian faiths believe, because it talks a little bit about reincarnation, about your personal spirituality, and just a lot more. So it's definitely worth a read. But he was Stephen King's inspiration, as I've said. There is a fabulous book that's an anthology of stories written by modern writers who wrote based on Matheson stories, and they're just really fabulous. I will look up the title of that as well. It's called He is Legend, and it's an anthology collection. But Richard Matheson is just fabulous. Some of his stories are a little bit sci-fi. Most of them are horror, but they're more situational horror than monsters, although there are plenty of monsters as well. He could get you in just a few pages, and highly recommend him if you are a fan of any horror writers at all. So, of course, I have to segue right now into the writer who scared the pants off of me first when I was maybe 12 or 13, and that is, of course, Stephen King, the master. This is Bazaar of Bad Dreams. It's not my favorite Stephen King book, but this is also a horror anthology, and it has a lot of very, very good stories in it. But my favorite Stephen King book, I'm going to have to say, well, let me name two, and of course it's a cliche, but well, I'll name more than two. Salem's Lot, The Stand, and what I think is my personal favorite, Different Seasons. Different Seasons is not all horror stories. It contains the story The Body, which the movie Stand By Me was based on, and also the story that The Shawshank Redemption was based on as well. So if you think that you're afraid of Stephen King, if you think that horror is really not for you, I would really recommend Different Seasons, because it's a great way to experience his writing without really being awake all night. So there's that. But sorry, he could do no wrong in my eyes. I also really enjoyed the Mr. Mercedes series, which is really not supernatural. It's more of a murder mystery. So it was also turned into a television series, which is very good. There's really not much supernatural there. It's just a good story. So the next writer that I'm going to talk about, who was inspired by Stephen King, is one of my absolute favorites. This man's work is just phenomenal, and for all my fellow Gen Xers, if you read his books, you will understand what I mean, because he is a Gen Xer as well. And although he is not an American, he talks about a lot of things that we can all relate to. And that is John Ajvide Lindqvist. He's a Swedish author. He's called the Swedish Stephen King. And this is an anthology. I just happen to have a lot of anthologies hanging around. He was the author of Let the Right One In, which is fabulous. This is Let the Old Dreams Die. This has a follow-up story to Let the Right One in this collection. It's a fabulous story. One of the stories in this book was turned into a movie called Border, and let's see, which one was that? Oh, it's called The Border, and I really highly recommend the movie. The movie is spectacular, but I just love his stories. He has a way of just cutting to things that we can all relate to, situations and people that we can relate to, like Stephen King, and really do a lot of heartfelt horror. So again, I would dive into him if I were you. He's really phenomenal. Now, I can't go without mentioning someone else who is related to Stephen King, literally, and that is his son, Joe Hill. Joe Hill is a phenomenal, phenomenal writer. He does write like his dad. He writes a lot of really good stories about people in just bad situations. My favorite Joe Hill books, Heart-Shaped Box, excellent story about a former rock and roll star. Nosferatu, which is phenomenal, and Horns. Now, Horns was turned into a film. I haven't seen it yet. Nosferatu was turned into a series on AMC. Not nearly as good as the book, but definitely it's worth watching. And guys, whenever I mention some of these stories that were turned into films, do yourself a favor, if you can, read the book before you watch the movie, and then try not to scream to see how the story was twisted around so much. That's all I'm going to say about that. But Hill is incredible. He is one of my favorites, definitely worth getting into. One of my other favorite authors, who is not American, is Japanese, and he is, oh gosh, his last name is Suzuki. Tashima Suzuki, I believe it is. He is the author of The Ring. I will leave the information in the description box. I'm embarrassed that I can't think of his whole name offhand, but I want to say it's Suzuki. I could be really wrong, so forgive me. But anyway, he has a series of books that are based on the original Ring, and they are just phenomenal. And Japanese horror is a little bit different from American horror because they talk about more existential things and not monsters. But he's just great. Really, really great. If you like The Matrix, you would enjoy his stories because it's related to a lot of the same concepts brought about in the Matrix, excuse me, and simulations and things repeating themselves, etc., etc. So head on there. Okay, my next author is going to be someone, I've read quite a few of their books. This is his latest. It's Paul Tremblay. This is horror movie. Not my favorite book, guys. This is for you, James. It has fancy red pages. Excuse me, my friend James of James Jam. She likes fancy covers. You can see that this has a VHS tape and some red on the binding all over. Didn't love this so much. It's about a cult horror movie that was never actually released that became known through YouTube videos. Interesting concept, but this one really fell flat for me. But he has quite a few books that are really excellent. I definitely recommend Head Full of Ghosts. One of my favorite horror stories of recent years. That novel was just excellent. Cabin at the End of the World, which was based on Knock on the Cabin, as well as, what was the other one? Now I'm drawing a blank. But anyway, horror movie was just so-so. Worth a read, but not the best. Now, for all of you who are too scared to actually read horror, I'm going to recommend a writer that I think that you all need to go out and run and get and support, because he is just so entertaining. He's such a fabulous writer. He writes comical horror stories that aren't really so much scary, but incredibly entertaining, and I adore him. And that is Grady Hendrick. Now, this was one of his more recent books. He has one that was out recently, How to Sell a Haunted House. I have not read this yet. This is on my to-read. I ordered it when it first was released, and I haven't gotten to it yet. I'm kind of saving it because there's going to be a series on HBO based on this book. So I kind of want to read it right before the series releases, and I knew it was coming out for a little bit of time, and that's why I've been holding off. But How to Sell a Haunted House was released recently, and he has another book coming out, I think in January or February. But his stories are just incredibly entertaining. There's Horror Store, which is about a zombie takeover in a store that's very much like an IKEA. And there's references to IKEA furniture names. There's a manager who tries to help out. There are two clerks who turn out to be heroes in the story. It's just really a very fun read. Another that I read that I loved is called We Sold Our Souls. And that's about a former rock and roll star who missed the band's big breakout when she left the band. And they took her music, excuse me, became successful, and apparently entered a pact with the devil in order to get success. And she's trying to get some revenge on them and get her fair share. It's a great story. It's so much fun. Highly, highly recommend it if you just want to be entertained. Another one of his that I loved, it was made into a movie. The movie is not nearly as good. It's called My Best Friend's Exorcism, and it's set in the 80s. Forgive me for that cough again. Hendricks, I believe, is also a Gen Xer, set in the 80s, and it's about a group of friends, and one in the group becomes possessed, and no one wants to believe her friend that this is happening. Pardon me. it's very heartfelt because you see the bond that these girls share. It's such a great read with a really good moral, and definitely I recommend it 1,000,000%. So I'm going to leave you with these. Head over, watch Winnie, watch Yota. I will be back next week. I'm not sure what our topic is next week, but the following week, the following week, if all goes well, we will be reviewing Apartment 7A, which is the Rosemary's Baby prequel. So stick around, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. My regular gig is handbags, so if you are new here, I appreciate you sticking around. And if you're into luxury at all, give me a sub. And I will see you all in my next video. Not sure what's coming up on Saturday, but we will soon see. Maybe a little something to reveal. See you then. Bye-bye.